All right, Cullah number 26 with Samer Ghani. What's up, dude? How's it going?
Hey,
Thanks for being here.
doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. It's a little gloomy of a day, but I got some things accomplished today, and
Yeah.
you know, and it's not over yet. So
Yeah,
still so much
absolutely.
potential. How about yourself?
No, I kind of enjoyed it today. It's like nice and warm out. So I ran a
Yeah,
couple errands like grocery shopping and all that stuff and bought some deodorant and that kind of quarantine living and then got back home and did some desk work basically.
sure. So how was the shopping? Is it still surreal? Is it still
Yeah, I think so.
awkward?
I think every time I see someone without a mask, I'm like actually shocked, you know?
Yeah,
I think if this has proven anything to to us as like a society in America specifically, like to our nation, it's that we're heavily divided on on almost everything, even down to this. So it's yeah, it's still a shock every time I go, and it's like anxiety inducing every time I go shopping or
yeah.
get gas or something.
No doubt. That's how I feel still too. I went um I went shopping again maybe on Monday or so. It was Monday. Yeah, I went to Home Depot. Yeah, I ran errands and stuff, and it was very. You look around and like weaving through the store. Trying to avoid people, trying to be like trying to imagine all the different particles in the air. Feel like
Yeah, yeah,
just feel like
seriously.
they're everywhere. you know. Um, so I hear you. It's not over. That fear of that stuff is still pretty palpable.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still
I don't think that's going to be going away anytime soon, unfortunately.
yeah.
That's okay.
Things are slowly opening, right? They're slowly changing. I think the there's some strange. I mean, it's not so strange, I suppose. It's you should to I've come to expect it, but with Wisconsin politics. But yeah, the governor said, "Hey, we're gonna have this shelter in place till this date." I guess did like a week longer than a standard state of emergency, and then the Supreme Court's like, "Hey, no, the state of emergency is invalid." You know, and so now everyone's very confused, and then Milwaukee County is like, "Oh no, but we support the original thing," and then it's very confusing now as to like
It,
what is even what is even legal, what is even the right thing to do. So
right. It's obviously affecting everyone of all classes so dynamically and differently, and like families and people in like their job fields and markets are being tested and like unlike they've ever been tested before. It's like this is clearly much different than the 2008 crash, and I think obviously like just due to the community that I'm in, I'm so heavily focused on like what other artists are doing and how they're surviving and stuff. But like I wish we could see as a nation how this is like heavily affecting everyone. The only thing, and maybe this is like a very liberal stance to take, is like if a lot of Republicans in Congress and the Supreme Courts believe that trickle down economics are like is like the key to us moving forward, they would realize that like a restaurant that can only open at half capacity is still not going to make enough money. Not only to they're going to make enough money to just keep the lights on, they're not going to make enough money to
right,
survive or pay back these loans. So like something drastic still needs to be done. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not an expert, but what I do know is like trickle down economics is not going to work, and like businesses being able to open at half capacity or even a little bit more or less is that's just not it's just not enough. It's not going to be enough to employ the amount of people they had employed before, and they're not going to be able to get enough income to move forward. So it's hard to think of a reality that this is the solution.
yeah, dude. I hear you, man. That's a great point about the trickle down, because that's what it really feels like, the CARES Act that Congress has passed. And this isn't you mentioned about Republicans, but this is a completely bipartisan bill. I think
Yeah,
even Bernie Sanders, like, I think the only person to not vote for it was like AOC, or the second time that she voted for the first one because there's two of them. So it's like unanimous, like a unanimous grab bag. That's what I've been talking to people about it, like, and hearing about how this whole thing, this crisis, is a giant corporate grab bag. It's just trillions of dollars of more tax cuts and benefits. And the you're saying about small businesses, yeah, they're the ones who they're scrambling, like they're scrambling to get the crumbs, right, the trickles of this
right.
giant thing. If you're a business owner and you deal with multi-million, you know amounts of revenue or turnover every year, like, you have a good relationship with a banker, and at a branch, or in a corporate branch or something, and you get these. A lot of times you'll get access to these loans, and these like the PPP loans or the EIDL loans, or whatever it is. You can get access to these things right away. Before the mom and pop, they have to step in line. They don't even have a whole accounting department. They don't have the resources, right, to even try and go after it sometimes too. And then they got to wait in line probably at their local small business administration, like, facility. So I hear you, man. There's not enough. This is not the answer. Whatever it is right now, like, there's still more and more people on unemployment, like, what, 30% of America potentially, they're saying 33 million now, almost, or is it more now? I can't even
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
It's
And
hard to
like the
keep
last
track.
like 5 to 7 million were like artists who worked for like graphic designers, videographers who worked for like marketing agencies because they're
Oh,
all
wow.
getting cut. They were next on the line to
Right.
get cut, to lose their jobs. This is obviously unprecedented. We hear that on every news source, and it's just the like more grateful for social media now than ever because it's really interesting to see how everyone's coping with it differently. And I
Yeah.
think I think it's beautiful that we have social media. It's obviously something that also needs to be addressed, maybe in a different life, maybe in another life, because we're
Yeah.
so dependent on it now.
It does feel so codependent, right? And it is so different how people are reacting, because I remember, I think, just recently reading this Gallup, I think it was a whole Gallup poll, and then the whole written explanation of like that poll and what they're surveying and stuff. And they were asking people who are ideologically more inclined towards Republicans or towards liberal or towards Democrats, and they're just like seeing people's stress levels throughout the year. It's just like asking people, how generally do you feel stressed or not, or do you feel confident in this and this. And whenever there's the opposing party, the people who are party loyalists, like, and the people who are really tied to these identities, their stress levels go up every single time the opposing party
Wow.
is ruling. And so there's this with Trump, it's been significantly, like, this phenomenon has been even more extreme, to a more extreme degree. Like, people are like, their entire fiber of being is like falling apart because this man is president or something. It's like that divides people even further, I think, like, too. Like, there's it's this thing where people's perspectives matter so much, right? How they react. If someone's saying to you every day, this virus is going to kill you, it's really dangerous, it's really, really dangerous, boom, it's going to kill your family, it's going to kill everything, you can't go outside, you can't go outside, that's one end of the extreme, right? And then people are going to be like, I can't go outside ever, can't touch the people, I can't do anything. Whereas the other side would be like, oh, this is just it's not even the flu, it's a hoax, it's not even real, all this stuff. And you go out willy-nilly, and if you're in the country or you're somewhere like where you don't see many people constantly, you might not ever have that high risk or anything. So maybe that might,
Right.
they won't even know the reality of like a densely populated. So this is like, you're right about this like divided thing, because it almost is dividing the like the urban rural divide is like on display with this virus, because it's almost worse for, I don't know, it feels, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and I think the irony to both sides is everyone is like fighting for their individuality to be heard, and we're like
Mm,
shunning other people's individuality and thought because it doesn't align with our fears of the virus, or not our fear, like lessened fears, like fears that we don't have the virus. So like I think the irony in that is so beautifully sad. It's
yeah.
like it's just so tragic that we can't, like, I don't know. And this is like issues like this are like not new to America, and I think we almost thrive when we're not rallied behind something. We actually thrive in a divide because our political system is built around it.
Mm,
Like everything we watch and consume, it's all kind of based loosely barbarically around the hero's journey. And like if I can rally behind something that not a lot of what Facebook and social media feeds me, that not a lot of people agree with, and I find other people that agree with me, that's like me furthering this ego as an individual in America, leading on this like kind of quasi hero's journey where it's like I believe in this, I'm going to find other people that believe in this too because I feel right in this. And like everything we watch is like loosely based on that, from horror movies to Star Wars and even to the evening news. Like it's all based on like tragedy and heroism and all that stuff. And I think our egos feed off that so much that we're in like, and being in quarantine has put us in such a rut. Like
mm,
we can't even think our outside ourselves in it. And I'm definitely guilty of that. I unintentionally find myself like judging and shaming people who I think are not social distancing, and I don't think
yeah.
that's fair. Everyone has to deal with this the way that they see fit. I don't think it's fair for me to think and feel that way, but I find myself unintentionally doing it, and I have to keep checking myself because everyone has to do what's best for them. If, I can't speak to somebody else's journey. I just think it's definitely changed the way we think about each other and ourselves, and I think that
Yeah.
more so than like most things, this is going to stick. Like a lot of things are going to be a little more permanent from this issue that we all find ourselves in, socially, that is.
Yeah, because I mean, I always remember seeing all those photos of places in Southeast Asia and seeing people wearing masks everywhere, and I'd just be like, "This is so bizarre. Like, why would they ever
Yeah.
do that? Why would they ever do that? It doesn't make any sense." And the United States, like, yeah, there was the Spanish flu outbreak over 100 years ago or something, but since then there really hasn't even been a giant like threat, collective threat that's novel. That's something that even under World War II, like the closest anyone got was Hawaii. You know what I mean? Which is still,
Right.
and they didn't even invade. It was just like a kind of, it was the Japanese at Pearl Harbor, right? And so like that was still scary, right? But it's not like it's over there in the Pacific. It's not even mainland. So there hasn't even been a collective threat. Like I'm trying to think of course there's been domestic terrorism, there's been 9/11, right? But as we're seeing all these numbers, 9/11 was 1,000 people roughly, and this is already 85,000 or something, and in a matter of a couple months. And so yeah, I wonder about how that changes our group think, because you're talking about a lot about like the electronic tribalism or something like being reinforced through, and since everyone's at home, we can't, I don't know, like things get reinforced because yeah, you're people. I think a lot of these things get reinforced because everyone's afraid, and like human, that's human nature in a lot of ways, is to like when you're afraid to be to that, like think about the the herd mentality, right? They call that, or the mob rule, right?
Hmm.
The mob part of like humans as a superorganism to survive, like to just be like, oh god, okay, like survive. This is how we do it. Everyone, they turn onto this mode in their brain, and I feel like a lot of folks, it started. I feel like it started really. Like everyone was very cautious. When the whole crisis came down, like everyone was down to really try and flatten the curve. At least that's how I felt. Like there was a
Yeah,
unity.
me too.
There was a unity. Everyone was like, okay, I guess this is what we do. There were some people who were like, this is, I don't know, but I think a lot. I forget who the founding father is. There's a famous quote of like, never give up. your liberty for the sake of security type situation. And like now that they've already done the bailout, and you've been seeing this the change in behavior of people in positions of power. Like I think after we learned a lot of things from the '08 crash, which you alluded to earlier, was like we learned a lot like about how these corporations get bailouts and grab bags that are, that don't have to be returned, or they don't have to, they are the ones who take the priority, right? And then maybe the people get, like in '08, people didn't even get bailed out. Like people like to pretend like the Obama administration was some like progressive institution. No, it was owned by Goldman Sachs, just like every other one. And they think about all millions of people were off and they had no home. Remember tent cities and stuff? Like people were just thrown out for being defrauded. There was like their houses were being like burned, and they were like, or they were kicked out of their houses, right? And then it's crazy. And I fear that with this too, that it's like, whoa, this is even a larger scale. It's like the same thing, in terms of like just bailouts, grab bags and stuff, where I don't know, $1,200 for a person, and there's a lot of unemployment, and it's not like there's nothing, right? But I fear that too, that the ramifications of this are going to be just astronomical, like economically, and how many, when people don't have jobs, then they don't get the health care, right? And when they don't have health care, then the healthcare crisis can get worse. There's a lot of things to be very cautious about how this is all playing out. And there's so many nefarious actors constantly. And it's during an election season. It's just like, right. I'm just so overwhelmed with this shit. Like during quarantine, it was almost nice to just turn it all off. Be like, all right, I'm at home for at least 7 weeks or whatever, at least before people start talking about opening. And so I was like, it was almost freeing in a way to just like be away. I'd stopped watching anything, and I just like looked within myself and just spent time outside and just fucking got to know some birds and trees. I was like, all right, these things don't care about COVID. No, what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And in a beautiful way, I think I ended up turning to like other people in our community, and a lot of beautiful things in Milwaukee, I think, have come from it. Like Forward Music Festival was like one thing I turned and poured a lot of my time into, just because it was so freeing, it was like, and it didn't even replace the feeling of like going to a show. It kind of was just nice to see other people, like watch that chat feed go, and like, and things like that. I think that is what's kind of kept me sane, because I feel the same way. It's like every time I wake up, I usually listen to NPR and like catch News Hour and see what's going on. And I found myself not doing that anymore, because like all I hear is the unemployment number has grown. Trump said something else that was really stupid. It was like this repetitive garbage. Like it's hard
toxic,
to handle,
man. It's like, what do I want to fill? It's your information diet. You know what I mean? It's like every day we consume. If we're consumers before creators, which I feel like most people, it's how the system is built, is to just like take. And I mean, I watch, I think that I watch videos every day probably, so, but yeah, it depends what you're watching and what your diet is made up of. And if it's constantly doom and gloom, and after a certain point, it was just like, there's nothing really else you can do other than
to wait.
Yeah. Other than just wait. So we're seeing, the all the numbers that are coming out, and we're seeing stuff like, obviously there's a, it's a terrible disease for the autoimmune compromised, and for the elderly and stuff, like the people over the age of 80, it's like devastating. And there are very strange cases of like there, all this weird data is coming out about how many people, like 90% of people could have it but just be asymptomatic, and that it's like so much more pervasive than we ever thought. But that also, it means it's more infectious, but also that means there's less mortality rate. If everyone has it and there hasn't been as many people, and that's what concerns me too, now that we're like kind of past the first like wave to a degree, like, and everything's starting to open up across the country and people are starting to like be able to take a little breath now, maybe, hopefully, is that just the change in narrative, how from when we started this stuff to how things changed. It was like, we're gonna need to flatten the curve. This virus, you can't stop the spread of a virus, right? Like this, like it's already infected almost everyone, right? Like it seems there's no stopping it, so we have to slow it to be more, so we can learn more about it, so we can make sure that the hospitals aren't at capacity, right? That was the whole flatten the curve. And so it seems like I've been looking at the research and from you that have been coming out of universities past couple of weeks, like Madison, they're coming out with a study pretty soon that I was looking at. People were covering that the hospitals are at 30 to 40% capacity, like they're not overrun. So that could mean a lot of things. It could mean like maybe we haven't reached it, but we've doing. I don't know. We follow the rest of the world, and we can see what's going on, and we can see much more people have this virus, and not as much are dying as the worst projections at the beginning, right? So it feels like we're in the low. We're the real numbers are coming in. The real data is coming in, and it's tough to adjust with all this shit because it's been such a, like you said, polarizing and really scary fucking time where people they want to do the right thing. I know that people want to, but there's people who won't leave their home and stuff, and they won't, because they're afraid. And it's like, that's probably not good for you. Like,
no, yeah,
especially
I
if you're
agree.
healthy. Like if you're healthy, like it should be I don't know. If you're healthy and you're asymptomatic, like there's I don't know. But at this rate, things are happening the way they are, and I think it's fine the way things are going. People are cautious, but I wish that the political, the politicizing of everything. It's tough to tell where the politicizing starts and where the real crisis starts, and where it's hard to know. Like,
I almost think if we weren't in election season, it would be less politically driven. It would just be like Trump and his madmen,
right.
being like these like ultra. They would frame themselves as these ultra leaders that are gonna like take us out of, like ride us out of this crisis. But instead, it's been, this is what we're doing, and this is what another party may not have done for you. And you know what I mean? And it's not necessarily disinformation, but it's not necessarily the information we need right now.
Yeah.
And it's, I think that's just sucks. I think that's part of the poison that is creating divide on the ground floor, unfortunately.
Yeah, man, the whole thing is just we got someone on Twitch, Gene Joe says, "Hey, ask Hammer about his favorite place in Florida." What does that mean?
Melbourne, Florida. It's like this small city. It's awesome.
Melbourne?
Jinjo is Melbourne, Florida. Jinjo is a band member of mine, if I'm guessing correctly. And we went last
right
year
on.
around this time to Melbourne, Florida. Yeah. It was great. We drank margaritas, got wasted on the beach, and like it was awesome. It was awesome.
That sounds like a good Florida
Yeah.
trip.
I hope Melbourne survives.
Yeah, right.
Go back.
I'm sure it's doing all right. If it'll survive. If New York City can survive, I think everything can survive.
I just think New York City's probably built stronger than Melbourne. Melbourne's on it is weak in the knees. I don't know if
Right.
it has a lot left in it.
I don't think even Florida had many restrictions. I'm not even sure. Yeah, Joshua Arter says Florida man Sammer.
No, I don't want to hear that. But thanks, Josh.
That's what he says. I'm just the messenger.
Josh Arter, though, by the way, is like the coolest photographer in Milwaukee. His 8-bit Game Boy photography, awesome.
Oh.
Just amazing stuff. Yeah.
I think I follow that Instagram actually. 8-bit Milwaukee, is that what that is?
Yep, that's Josh Arter. He's super talented, super creative. It's great stuff.
Hell yeah. Yeah, that's what I miss, man. Those collaborative Milwaukee things being, like we were just talking a little bit before about shows and about how there's no shows, and I think that's where I think I met you through probably some show photography or through. I'm trying to think. I
The-
think
I,
met
I
you.
I know exactly how it happened.
Was
I
it at a
think
festival?
you were asking for a photographer for a show, and Andy Kosenki linked me to you, and I
Right.
DM'd you, and then we met at Kaylee Conway's release show at Anodyne.
Right. That's right. That's right. No,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, Andy introduced both of those times. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was great. Remember shows?
Yeah, it
Remember?
was about a year ago now, actually, because I shot that show in Madison, and I didn't even. That was such a good show. That was awesome. That
Did
was a good time.
yeah? It's unfortunate that there's no shows now, but I don't know when. Man, I don't know when things are gonna be going back to normal. I don't know. I would imagine that a lot of places are just gonna open up ASAP. Like
I think so.
last night I heard. I live across from Riverwest Pizza, and I heard a big party, of people there like last night, just drinking,
Nice.
having, and I'm just like, okay, like it's only a matter of time before
Yeah.
it's who knows, that could just be a small group of the people who work there and their friends or something, or who knows. I have no idea who they were. It wasn't like a huge like rager party, but it was clear that there were people were inside drinking, and so it's a yeah. I think it's only a matter of time, and we'll see. I think they just did like 6 or 8 thousand testing, the national Wisconsin National Guard. I went. I was just like, I don't know. I thought that more people were gonna go, but I mean, tons of people still went, I suppose. But I just went to get it just because I was just curious. I'm like, what is this thing? And I wanna kind of like get a little get something. I don't know. Why not? It was free.
No.
It took me half hour, to do
And you
it.
got tested?
Yeah. I just went. I think it's still there. I think on 57th and Capitol,
They
you can.
shove something all the way down your
It's
nose?
not all the way. They just swab
Oh.
like mostly all the most. They don't go like into your brain. You know.
Oh, that's what I thought it was. I was like, I'm
There
never
are
getting
ones
tested.
I've
I'm not
seen
getting
those.
this disease. It's not happening. This virus.
Yeah. The good thing about the good thing about the virus, it seems to be definitely deadly for people, but people who are young and have strong immune systems, it seems like it's pretty it comes. There are cases of weird cases where people can get really sick, but most people get through it with mild symptoms. It seems the grand majority, and the people who do have it bad, it's still like 90%, of the people survive it, and it could be terrible, but it is what it is. It's like, it's kind of the new normal. I agree. I don't know how things are gonna go back to normal. I know Live Nation said that they're gonna go back. They're expecting fully normal show activity January.
I think January is like maybe
That's
a
like
normal
a
projection. I don't necessarily see things like Summerfest happening this fall, to be honest. I don't. I mean, like, I hope it doesn't. Not because I think Summerfest is great for what it brings to Milwaukee, and I think a lot of local talent can be seen by, by people that that would never normally reach. But I don't think that's realistic for Milwaukee. But I don't know. I'm not an expert. The thing I do miss about shows, I think the most, is that it was my way of like paying the community back, and like I don't I
right.
I
Yeah.
like I after I got all my shit stolen, and I started shooting shows for free because I didn't know how to pay people back anymore. And when I was doing those studio sessions where it was like name your own price, I would try to deliver like as many photos to people as possible because I just wanted people to feel valued, not even just by my work, but in a way like what you're doing for the community and what you're doing for yourself is so positive. Like I just want to help. And since being in quarantine, I like helped out with Forward Music Festival, and a shout out to
Mm.
Jason and Andy, who are like awesome for doing that. And I shot a music video, kind of like it was more of like a short. I don't know if it was like a short film. It wasn't necessarily like a music video either, but I shot a video for Nick from Flat Teeth, and that was great. That was like another great collaborative like way to express while in quarantine. I'm shooting another music video for Social Caterpillar this weekend, and I'm
Nice.
doing them for free because I'm like trying to continue to pay back the community, but it's shows were my way of kind of supporting, and I'm having a hard time like getting my footing moving forward. Like almost my whole industry has collapsed. You know, I've already
Yeah,
missed
dude.
like 5 weddings, 6 weddings that we were supposed to shoot, and just like a ton of stuff. And I know other shooters are probably feeling the weight too. I just think more importantly to me, like not necessarily making money and like doing these weddings, is how do I continue to support the community that was like there for me. And that's what I'm struggling with the most. That's It's given me a lot of anxiety and guilt. I think a lot more guilt than I'm
Yeah.
willing to admit.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because the whole industry, like you said, is at a standstill, if not gone. Like the people go on live streaming, right? Like they can go online and live stream, but it's not even close to the same of any. It's a completely different beast. Like the in person community building, in the scene. I totally get that mindset because I loved, like, my favorite thing to do was to get paid at a show and then to have like a stash of all the money that I made from shows, and then use that money to go to multiple shows, a week in my neighborhood, and just be paying the cover charges with the money that I made within the music, and just like keeping
Yeah,
that
pouring it back
machine
in.
going, and allowing for that to happen. And yeah, man, it's just a time where, yeah, guilt. There's a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of things, but if there's no shows, man, there's nothing that we can do about it until there's shows. So it's
Yeah,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of people doing good things, and unfortunately, I don't know what this looks like after. Like, I don't know how many people's careers have been fucked, or how many people invested everything and banked it on this year being their year or something, like making, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah, that's like
it,
exactly what I did, and it feels like it blew up in my face. You know, that's
right.
what sucks. And I know like there's a million of me feeling this way, and it just feels like it blew up in my face. I feel like I invested everything into like one backpack worth of gear, and now this backpack's like sitting next to me like collecting dust. And it's not that I haven't been like
Right.
productive in my time. It just feels so, I don't even know how to describe it. It feels hollow. You ever play Dark Souls? It feels like dying in Dark Souls.
I haven't played, but I can imagine. I mean, what sound like your entire essence and being was built around and for and of this community. So, like, when everything ceases to be, it's like, well, who am I now, and what is my value? Like, what do I even
Yeah,
do? And you know, I hear you, because that community is such an important aspect of who we are. But you know, everything will come back, to a degree. When it will and at what rate, I don't know. But man,
I,
there's you can't control. There's things that are out of your control, and when it comes to
right,
like
right.
fear and shame, like, there's no reason to be shaming yourself for something that you don't have control over. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I do think kind of like how overgrowth will like take back a street lamp or a fence or something. I think the artistic community is going to like overgrow over whatever's happening right now. It's going to find its way back into like the norm of society and culture, and like our daily lives moving forward. I do think it's going to be like digitally, and I think that is like a culture shock for a lot of businesses and artists and stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah, for sure.
Um, so I don't know. I know that like a lot of what I do is digital, but so that's okay for me in a way. It's just hard. I don't know. I don't know. I think that's the part that sucks for like all artists, basically everyone. It's just like there's too much uncertainty. There's so much uncertainty
Right.
in for such a long period of time, and I think if history has told us anything about humans, especially humans in America, is that we don't deal well with long-term problems. And long-term
Mm-hmm.
problems look like systemic racism. They look like school shootings. It looks like global warming. And we we react to these problems appropriately when they happen, but when given enough time, we tend to forget because it's not in our fucking face. And I think that's our
Right.
problem. Like we don't know how to react to something that isn't in our face all the time, which is why it's easy for like global warming to be pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. And I think that's kind of where we're getting to with COVID. And it's really hard for us to deal with what the future is going to look like when we have no certainty in the future. And that's why I think some people's reaction to the uncertainty is open this city up. I need to go
Right.
back to normal, like we just don't deal well with short term or long term problems in the short term. And everyone's reacting very negatively to it unfortunately. So like I think to circle back, I think that guilt and shame comes from not being able to control that feeling. And
Sure.
I hope other artists feel the same way in a way or can relate. I hope I'm not entirely alone in
No, dude,
that. But
I completely relate, and yeah, I had whole, I had banked so much on it too. You know, I had multiple tours planned, already
yeah,
booked. Like I was ready to do it, ready to fucking excited. I don't know, but looking back, I'm like almost like, oh, it was almost a big relief in a way. Like it's I wanted to do that. I looked forward to it so much, you know. But in a way, it was like, oh, all of that logistics and all of that unknown of what that could be, you know, it's like, okay, I can wait a little bit longer. And although I grew up on the internet and like being creative on the internet and sharing with communities and stuff online, so I basically just kind of resorted back to a you know a high school or grade school Cullah, you know, like building a new
you're telling
computer,
me.
like going online, not dating anyone, you know what I mean? Like just like in high school. And so it was, I don't know, it I feel like I I always try to find the silver lining in certain things. In crisis, everyone says, you know, I forget what the quote is, but you should never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think that's true with what you're saying about this short-term versus long-term mentality. Like I remember growing up hearing this quote about some, I don't know how real this is or what it's actually attributed to, but it was like something in grade school or someone was like, the Native Americans believed that you should, you know, whatever you consume or whatever you take from the earth, you have to give, you know, 5 generations worth. So like if you cut down a tree, you have to plant 5 more or whatever. Or if you're gonna kill a deer, you have to make sure that multiple more generations of deer will be able to be, you know, sustain their life. And I think that's, whereas right now it's a lot of it is just, we're experiencing this freaking, yeah, just constant turnover of just always ever consume and throw it out, consume and throw it out. Like everything is disposable. And like these things that we're supposed to value, everything is just disposable. And so I think it translates in the way that we act to each other, and we act towards our children and stuff. Is just like this, yeah, this more short term. And I don't know if that's like, I don't know if it's a real thing or if it's manufactured consent of people doing this, or if it's just a reaction to like more levels of inequality and people are just trying to survive, and everyone's like kind of reverting to try to make sure they get their hierarchy of needs like met, because things are so shaky. It's hard to tell like what's even real and what's even not, you know, with these crises. So it's so easy to get lost in that it's like you really, it's those are good questions to ask though. Like, what am I in relation to my community? Like that type of crisis is actually a really educational, transformational experience. And like you were saying, like you hope that the artist community will be able to come back stronger. And I think if the artists and everyone has been doing it right, like they've been looking within, and people have been using this time to channel everyone's creative energies and our desire to communicate. And like maybe I think a lot of people took this stuff for granted, myself included, like how just you could interact with the community, right? Like how much I took for granted just going to a show and seeing a friend, and like how much that impacted my life and how much that brought me joy and defined who I was. And it's, absence makes the heart grow fonder,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And obviously the grass is just like always greener
Right.
where you choose to water it. I think moving forward, I think what I've been trying to do at this time is like learn more about like the history of photography. And like I
Mm.
realized that like I own a film camera. I've shot like multiple rolls of film, but I don't know the first thing about developing and like all those tribalistic rituals that used to happen with photography before it became what it is today. And I'm trying to build my own developing like station in my basement and like
Oh,
learn to
nice.
develop with non-toxic chemicals and like really like return to the roots of photography that I missed, because I also grew up with the age of the internet. And like, digital was all the only thing I knew. I honestly thought film was a novelty until I got back into photography in like 2015. I thought it was just like
Sure.
what people do for fun. I didn't realize there are whole careers built around it and stuff. So I've been trying to do like learn more. I've also reverted to like a 17-year-old gamer boy and like just games with my buddies online. A lot of
Dude, a
nights,
lot
a
of
lot of
people,
Animal Crossing and stuff.
it's kind of a really great way. Like, we're lucky in that way, right? Like,
Yeah,
we're lucky
yeah,
that we can do this. In the Spanish flu, people couldn't they couldn't even call each other up, you know what I mean? Like, they're stuck. But now we have the time where we can communicate and, and stuff. And another thing we take for granted. But yeah, I mean, using the time you got, dude, making the best with what you have. And darkness comes, and it's just real, and death comes, and it's a huge part of what being human is. And I think it might scare people straight, hopefully, and not scare people into these tribal echo chambers, hopefully. I don't know. It's hard to tell, because it's during these crises, like, I remember 9/11, just even being young, like, I think I was in like 4th or 5th grade at the time, like, how big of an event that was for the country, and how it was such a national, like, such a national call for, like, just this real crisis and terror and stuff. And I remember, like, then how it all developed, and how it slowly got co-opted into these fear, and like how our rights slowly got taken away, and all this stuff. And it just, from this fear. And I'm afraid that that's what this is going to do again too. Like, with just even, I think the quote is, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like that. I hope that people are getting scared straight and not scared stupid. You know what I mean? Is what I'm trying to say. And I'm just ready to get out and start performing, man, and start doing that. I'm, it's not going to happen this month, right? I think people are going to start doing it, and it's going to be tough, because it's going to be people's real feelings are going to be tested, and people's real freedoms are going to be tested. It's not going to be, you can't go outside. It's going to be like, okay, this is your choice now. Whereas before, it kind of was easy to just be like, oh, well, I can't, governor says I can't go, so I won't, but now it's like, okay, well, now you have to actually, this is real now, or it's like, that's what it feels like when it's your real choice.
yeah. Like the tutorial is over. It's like hey, choose your own adventure now. And
Mm.
I think it's my fear is that it's going to tear people apart in a way. Like there are definitely going to be people who are ready and comfortable to go out, and like who maybe don't live with people who are having a compromised immune system, or who are older. And
Right.
like, and I think as much as I hate to say it, I think that's the right choice for some people, is to just go out and do the thing. And I think it's the right choice for society to allow people to do that if that's what they choose to do. And I think subsequently it's the right choice for people to stay at home if they choose to. I just think that we just need to be able to rally behind one thing,
Yeah.
and like allow this virus to just do its work, because we can't like just put air filters everywhere and like call it a day. Like, we just need to let this virus kind of pass through us. And we did flatten the curve, like you said, but I think now it's almost just time to like let it be what it is. And that's kind of like a morbid way to look at it, but there's almost no other solution, given
Right.
the way the country is reacting, the way that the government's reacting. Like, I think that's the only
Well,
way
what are
we
the
have.
others? What are people saying, that you just stay home forever, or you wait for a vaccine? I've been hearing that. It's like, you have to stay home until the vaccine comes out.
Which is
Whereas,
going to be a year from now. If
yeah,
I actually read this
that's
morning that
not
it could be
reasonable.
never.
That's
It could
not
be devastating.
reasonable. I don't see that ever happening. Like I was worried about that too, about like how long people would be even okay with being at home. And I think everyone was like waiting, being like, okay, what are the numbers? What are the numbers? Like, we don't really know. And that's where I was, I was being like, well, okay, I'm quarantined. I was, still like slowly closing my social circles, like slowly removing people and slowly going and only seeing like more specific, close friends or people that I had things planned for multiple occasions. Like, okay, only gonna hang out with them for these 2 weeks, and then I had a call with my friends in England and France and stuff. Like, it was a couple weeks before the shelter in place here, and they had already had shelter in place, and and I was just like, oh shit, like this is real. Like, this is about to hit. Like, we're about to do the same thing. And then sure enough, a week later, all these states started doing shelter in place, and I was just like, oh man, like, okay, we got to take our precautionary measures, and so we did, and I think that's good. I think that actually, I think it was kind of amazing how everyone did do that, and like, there wasn't really that much. There was a collective, like, okay, we're gonna do this, and like we
Yeah.
were saying earlier, like there was this sense of unity, and then I think once that happened, then everyone readjusted their all these the media companies, all these people just readjusted to what they do, and that is like, yeah, these short-sighted, how do we make money off of everything. Once I started seeing like on-demand mask creating with like people's logos and all this stuff, and like people selling mask swag and shit, I was just like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, this has gotten out of control.
Yeah,
Like,
it's kind of fucked up. I think it serves the capitalistic market is built that way though.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like
I mean,
people are gonna like things are gonna spring up if people are buying them, and that just is sad to. You're basically profiting off poor people, whether you want to agree with it or not. That's like my hard stance on it. Is things like that profit off poor people, people who are scared, and I think
yeah, people without access to the.
yeah, and that's capitalism at its finest, baby.
Yeah, I mean, I remember right at the crisis when the toilet paper shortage happened, and I had a good friend who like, we in the text chat, like one other good friend, like we're all known each other for years, and they know each other. They're even better friends than I am with each other, and they. The one person goes like, hey, does anyone have any toilet paper? Or like, I'll pay you. Like, I've been to multiple stores and I can't find any. I'm about to go out. Did anyone get some extra? Like, and my other friend's just like, yeah, I got a bunch like the other day. I'm selling them for, $30 for 6. And I was like, this is your like good friend. I was just like,
Yeah, that's insane.
whoa. I was
That's
like,
why.
and that shows you like how, to me, it was just like, it shows you how people are really programmed to like think that way, or to get ahead of it. Like, okay, I'm gonna, like, thinking of it when there's gonna be a shortage. Okay, I got to get it now, and then I can sell it, and then, because then I'll need that money, because it's gonna, they're probably thinking for themselves, right? To be like, I need this stuff to protect my own family and my own interests and stuff, and it's kind of every person for themselves, and that's what that mob mentality, I think, can really do. And
It's a pretty interesting
yeah,
stance to resell toilet paper though, because like the ideology is that you buy some so that you're safe because money is becoming more irrelevant, not to sell it for money that isn't holds no relevance if you can't buy the stuff you need. Like
right.
like that barbaric thinking is so short sighted. Like, not that your friend's barbaric by any means, but that is like such a short
I
sighted.
was very shocked. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie. Like,
yeah,
I was like, oh shit, you one of them guys. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah, for
Like,
sure.
that's
No, for
that's what I
sure.
thought. But I was in a position of, where my roommate had been at Woodman's like a week earlier and got the giant Woodman's thing, because we to re up. So we were really lucky that we did it, because we would have been struggling too, to try and find something. But yeah, it's just kind of the whole thing is very. I wonder about folks, like, I think about my little sister who's like 15, about how the war in Iraq is older than her, right? And like, she, like, all she knows is the '08 crash and this crazy thing, and where it's just going to be worse than that one, probably, how the economic impacts. obviously this is we're talking about 30 million. I think a lot of people will be able to get back to work, but a lot of businesses, there's going to be major damage, and it's going to, like, we're going to be feeling the ripple effects of that. But like, I just think about like how disenfranchised our generation and the generations below us are gonna even, they're even gonna be more disenfranchised than us, because I feel like, we had George W. Bush and 9/11 and stuff, and things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. But I feel like they're even it's even it might even be worse for them too, because it's like, I don't even know, it just feels so surreal. It feels like reading the book 1984 to a lot of
Yeah,
it feels like
absolutely.
a dystopia, and I think and that's,
Absolutely.
I feel like a lot of people feel that way, and that's why I don't know, I empathize with, I've always been an independent, like in terms of political thinking. Like when I was a kid, I remember asking my dad, like, how do you vote for people? And he's like, well, you look at their policies and you vote the one you like, and that was it. He never told me anything about, I was lucky that, he didn't tell me like party propaganda or anything, like he told me to think for myself. And we're in Wisconsin, we're lucky that we can, because not a lot of states you can even be an independent. You have to vote for a party, and I don't know. So I've always kind of had that lens of just very much being not, not ever affiliated to a party. I would consider myself to be like definitely more progressive, like in terms of thinking, but it's so hard to put simple labels on things, because that word means something different to someone else. It means something to so many different people. But I don't know. I just can't help but see the parallels and like of just outrage just constantly on both sides, because I have a lot of family and friends that I can see, and like luckily I try to balance my Facebook feed with people on both on of equal sides, you know what I mean? Like there's people on the left and there's people on the right, and I get to see both of them doing the same exact things.
Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
and when one, like I was mentioning before, when one administration comes in, the stress levels of the other one goes out, and they just start going, oh my God, this guy's Satan, he's the worst, I can't believe our whole democracy's flawed. Like anytime it's the other guys, it's like they're the worst and it's a terrible decision. And then anytime it's theirs, it's like the defendant and stuff. And it's just, I think, yeah, how I think it's gotta. I'm just feeling like I'm waking up a little bit more to things of being like what we actually have control over, and how much of a farce maybe that our political system really is in, and how these crises really have shown the weakness of our
Well,
culture, of our, like, yeah, our I don't know, like I want to be like, oh yeah, think about that unity we had together when it was real, with this real threat, and then once the threat started to like wane, then everything just like, it was a grab bag. It was like, ugh. Like,
I think our political system might be just like built like a scale, and I think just
mm-hmm,
to the point you made a little earlier about like how one side gets so stressed out about the other, I think that like that whole cycle of like, one party's in control and different types of businesses and the economy is being stimulated in a different way because of this party's policies. Then we get we get another side in control after 4 or 8 years, and they stimulate the
mm-hmm,
economy in a different way, and they end up like creating jobs in a different way and doing good things in a different way, and then it's just like this capitalistic cycle. And the true wool over our eyes is this political system is a product of capitalism, which is a product of our political system. They're like the hand that feeds itself, and it's just it's not for the people. It was built for the people, but it's just after World War II, it stopped being for, after the Industrial Revolution, it stopped being for the people, and that's just becoming more and more apparent when, when so many people lost their jobs. We realized who is essential, but essential for specific needs, and like what we consider non-essential. Then now there's this wane on things that were non-essential, that these people are essential because they were stimulating the economy in ways we didn't expect, and like it's just, we're realizing that none of what we've built is benefiting people. It's only benefiting people who make money and are decision makers and stuff like that. And I think that's the
mm-hmm.
hardest thing to swallow, is that we're all in that boat together of not being supported. And I don't know if we need to be supported necessarily by a company or our government, probably by our government, but it's just like this, there was no net for any of us to fall in. We all fell through. And I think that's the part that sucks where there's no unity is that we're all hurting from this.
Right.
Like, and like the fact that we can't rally behind that anymore is sad. Like like the student debt forgiveness, like we can forgive student debt, and it's okay that some people paid off their debt. That's okay.
Right.
Some, like that's, and it sucks if you just paid off your debt and then they forgive it like next week. That sucks, and I'm sorry, but it doesn't mean everyone has to go through that. Like we can move on and be better as people, and learn from our mistakes. And we're just not doing that yet. And part of me thinks this summer is going to be really testing for that. And I think the best thing we can do as individuals is like just remind the people that we're around, the people that we talk to, that we're like, we're all in this together. Like no one's
Right.
each other's enemy, no matter what policies end up becoming in place. And I think that's where we're failing, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's just that basic empathy and communication, I think, because like the basic maybe respect, because that's the one thing that really gets me. I understand the political and like psychological manipulation, and I've become more and more and more cynical in terms of like the efficacy of our own politics, like elected politics and stuff, because
Yep.
it really, and that's why I'm like happy and just diving more into my artistic ventures and trying to make some differences in that regard. But like when it comes to I see people blaming each other and their neighbors like way before the blatantly obvious corrupt leaders, that it's just like, what are you gonna, I don't know. That's the most frustrating thing for me, where everyone starts getting so upset with their neighbors and their fellow countrymen, and it's like, don't you see this fucking scam? Like you're made to be angry at this person. Like it's the age old adage of divide and conquer, right? Like
Yeah.
the two-party system is literally exposing this inherent like flaw in our human nature, and just exposing it more and more, and like using it's being used, against the greater or larger population. It's mind blowing. It is really like everything is like these weird, soft psychological and economic controls now. It's not like you're enslaved in a, and you don't get food, and we have to like, there still is a lot of, poverty. And that's, one of the biggest issues, right? Is because people don't have the tools to be able to empower themselves, and they're actually being oppressed as opposed to, actually being given the tools, right? Because I think most people, when given the tools, are going to do the things to survive, But yeah, man, it just feels very confusing, and people are so polarized, and I talk to people a lot, and with different ideas, like a left and right wing and stuff, and I can have the same arguments with people, and they all agree on almost all of some of them. Like there's so much that we agree on. There's so much that, like you said, we're all in this together. Like that is absolutely true. Like these myths that you have to hate your neighbor are really toxic myths, and we need to change those myths.
Yeah.
We need to change those. Like, and I don't know. I see this is a very interesting moment in electoral politics, where like it's so generationally divided, like in terms of what people really believe, that I have a lot of left wing and right wing, people who are both really just populists and are becoming more and more reasonable, but don't really find a home in the current political parties, and I can't help but think that like the ultimate thing would be to have a party or some sort of movement that has to get right and left together. Like there's a lot of overlap with progressive and libertarian like ideas, which are the majority of the like the third party type mentality. There's a lot of that they can have in common, and I feel like if those people can get together and be galvanized with this stuff, like if we can find these coalitions of people at it, maybe it won't, electoral politics is only one way to do these things, but there's a lot of people in state governments and things. There's a lot that can be changed at the local levels, and it just feels so defeated though in Washington. It just feels I don't know, like our whole lives Congress has had like an approval rating of like 12 and less, Like, is that even real? That's not even a real number. Like,
I honestly don't even know, but that wouldn't entirely surprise me. And that 10% is probably RBG, and that's it. Like I don't know. I
yeah.
don't.
Sorry, did I say Supreme Court? I meant
No,
Congress.
no, that was just my
Oh,
ignorance.
sure, sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The legislative body, the Senate and the House. The people who write the laws, because there's no shortage
right.
of solutions, man. Like, there are so many brilliant solutions. Like, instead of a giant corporate grab bag to everyone, all just sending out, okay, here's all this money without any questions or any types of what you have to use this for. Like, you know, granted, it wasn't just willy nilly. There are some restrictions and stuff, but way less restriction and way more forgiving of just handing this stuff out than you and me. We'll get $1,200 and hopefully be quiet and be asked to be quiet. But
The irony is, if they
yeah,
gave every taxpayer 10 grand, all those taxpayers would pay off their debts because they don't want to lose their houses and shit,
yeah,
and
dude,
all that money would flood right back to the
just go right
banks.
back to the bank. Yeah, exactly, dude. That's I completely agree. And the one of the major differences of how Europe was dealing with this versus us is they just bailed out the people directly by paying their payroll. So like that would, because especially in the United States, when a lot of people's insurances are tied to their employers, when you're in a crisis and you get all this unemployment, a lot of those people are now off of insurance, right? During a health crisis. I mean, granted, the hospitals aren't even like seeing people anyway, which is bizarre too. But
Right.
like maybe an unintended consequence, but it feels like there are so many better solutions, like you're saying, and there's just such short-sighted. How do I, people in Congress are just really, how do I fill the needs of the people who have my ear, the people who pay me to get reelected, the people who I serve, and that's not you and me. And we, everyone in America seems to really know that at a fundamental degree. Like everyone, that the largest voting bloc is non-voters, right? And the majority of those don't vote because they know it's a sham or it's a farce. Like that.
I didn't vote my whole life up until this last Democratic primary.
There you go.
I voted for Bernie. My first vote ever was for Bernie Sanders, and I lived my whole life thinking that voting didn't matter as a person of color, and just seeing the
Mm.
political climate through my whole life, from like, especially from like 9/11 being like the first bookmark of like when I'm like almost forced to follow politics from that point on, because my life changed after
I
9/11,
bet.
like the way I was treated and all that stuff.
No
And
doubt.
so like when I went through my whole like middle school and high school career thinking that like voting doesn't matter, so I just never did it. And then we saw Barack Obama become president, and I was 18 and I was like, wow, this is maybe things aren't so bad here, maybe things are going to change. But you hear about the drone program, you
Yeah.
see like the mishandling of the 2008 financial crisis. And was Barack Obama one of the better presidents that we've ever had? Absolutely. Was he my favorite president? Absolutely. But it didn't give me faith as a person of color in America that voting mattered. And it was only until I met certain people in my life that I'm very thankful to have, who have changed my mind. But I still truly don't believe. I only vote
Yeah.
because I only vote to please the people around me, and if there is a way to make a change, at least I'm trying. And I encourage everyone to vote. Like, please vote if you feel any sympathy or like any parallel between what I've just described and the way you feel about voting. I do encourage you to vote anyways. But do I think it works? No, I don't think it works. I don't really think it's ever worked. I don't think I feel like voting is just treating a symptom.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily change. It doesn't change. And the change that voting could incur will take so long that new more apparent problems are going to be in our face instead. And that just circles back to, we don't do well with long spanning issues that aren't in our face. We can only handle short term. And I think that's been the history of humanity. Humanity hasn't been able to think about things like that. And so I don't think voting works because we're not built to look 4 years into the future.
Yeah.
We're not built for that.
I hear you, man. That just that sentiment of knowing that it does feel so defeated, like I said. So it is that nihilist existential, like, well, it's all a dumb universe with no meaning, and the vote doesn't matter. And a lot of ways in a lot of ways you're totally right. You know, that because the fundamentals of our democracy are pretty on shaky ground, right? Like when it comes to democracy indexes across the world, all the different healthy, quote unquote, healthy democracies, we're never in the top 5, that's for sure. A lot of places have us really low, and even during this last primary, there's all these calls for recounts. No one recounts the stuff, and if they do, they don't tell you how they did it or any of it. Nothing is transparent. I follow DEF CON, which is the defense contractors of where nerds come together to try to hack secure things, and every year they always just destroy the security of these voting machines. And there's just so much sketchiness with all these voter rolls, and every time there's a New York primary or New York election, it's just disgusting. It's even in California, stuff these big parties, you just see it's they don't even care. They don't even care about the fundamentals of they don't believe in this vote. They believe in the oligarchy of no, this is our party. We decide who gets to vote.
Right.
And so to a degree that's huge, but I also encourage everyone to vote, because if those 40% of people did vote, you're never gonna get a situation, at least currently, where you have to overwin by by 30% or something in order to maybe win. You know what I mean? Because that's how tilted things are. But if everyone were to go out and exercise, I think it's at the very least it's a ritualistic act. And I think that rituals are taken as seriously, and to be a citizen, no one is exercising these rituals, so no one is really defining themselves by their political power that they have in electoral politics, is only is your vote, right? So the only thing you really, other than running for office or working for some sort of organization or campaign or whatever it is, as a citizen, your civic power that you have is your vote. And that's, if you think about, that's what I try to think about it. That's the power you have. And so I get really frustrated with people who know that that's the really powerful, but they just give it away too, right? To me, just throwing it away, it means a lot of different things. I mean, I guess throwing away, I don't shame anyone for voting for anything. I don't believe it's that from a principled standpoint, you vote for whatever the fuck you want to vote for. You can vote for Donald Duck down the fucking ballot. I don't give a shit. You went and voted, and you exercised your ritual, and you were able to exercise your right. Yeah, you played your part. So I think it's, the onus is that people have forgotten the power that they have, and that's a perfect example. 40% of people, you grew up being told it doesn't matter, and I've always wondered, and I struggle with this my whole life. Thinking about it is that just, are people disenfranchised on purpose and told that these things don't matter, and then that so people can perpetuate their own power in the system? Because if you believe, I don't know, I feel like if I don't know, there's a part of me that's okay, if everyone did vote, what would happen? If the young people actually turned out this primary, and voted for Bernie Sanders, in a lot of these primaries, after those first 3, and to try to rally to the call of the elites to vote, to all coalesce over Joe Biden. If there was an equal amount of activity in those people that were disenfranchised and the younger people, but it just didn't happen, and I don't.
I wanted it to, and I like I said, I voted for this last primary because of that. I wanted to be a part of that change that I thought was coming. I think a lot of millennials don't vote because they don't believe in the way that we live, and I think the first step into exercising that without protesting is to not participate. And I think like the second step of not participating is like not working for somebody. And there's so many artists and entrepreneurs in our generation, not only because there's so much more of us than boomers. So like obviously there would be more entrepreneurs and artists, but I think artists are a reaction to not believing in the system. And whether we want to admit it or not, I think that's exactly what we are. We're a reaction to that. And I think voting while being that is the best way to do it, because you're not cutting off your toes, so to speak, you know?
It
And
doesn't hurt you to vote. You know what I mean? It doesn't.
yeah,
It's not like.
I did carry guilt every
Yeah.
election I didn't vote. I did, especially when Trump got, as much as I hate, it pains me to admit, I didn't vote in 2016 because I didn't believe in it. And that feeling was reinforced when I saw that Hillary won the popular vote. I was like, see, it doesn't fucking matter.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've always carried guilt, but like to your point, like you don't lose anything by voting. And I do hope people can vote, and I do hope people can go through growth like I did and change and meeting the right people that can help maybe change the perspective and like just to be a part of something, even if it doesn't work, to try to change. I think voting is as important as everything else that we do, like filing your taxes and all that
No
shit,
doubt.
if not more important. So like I've definitely learned, and it took me a long time, and I'm definitely carry the guilt of the years that I chose not to. And it's not that anyone taught me not to. It's, you know, being a person of color in America, it's hard to believe in anything. It just is. It's hard to believe in. It's hard to have faith in anything other than yourself. Like and even that gets shook. It gets shook just going grocery shopping. You know, it's hard. And most of the people that don't vote end up being people of color, and I sympathize with that. I really do. I empathize with it. It makes sense to me. It just does.
Yeah.
But I'm changing.
When it makes sense. I mean, phenomenologically, and like why people wouldn't. I mean, a lot of times there are huge active efforts to co-opt the system in order to disenfranchise these folks from voting altogether, right? I mean, it's part of the game, you know, like the people. It's what blows my mind about how, you know, the most impoverished areas continue to vote in people who continue to hurt them. You know what I mean? And I don't know how much of that has to do with it, of like encouraging people to not vote. But that's the thing that the other thing is, like, you're not voting, but the other people are. The other people are, yeah. You know, everyone else, those other 60% of people, like, actually, I think we're going to see record turnouts for boomers and older this next election. It's going to be, they're going to blow it out. Like, it might not even matter if there's going to be turnout like this primary for younger folks. Like, no one's gonna no progressive or no forward thinking ideas are going to come. It's just going to be madness, I think. Like, I don't know. It's the institutions. The institutions are being questioned. Like, our generation, like you were saying, we're kind of a reaction to that. I think, yeah, it's always the role of the artist to weave a vision for a future, or like a future or some sort of culture that can be changed, right? Like, I think that is the role of the artist. But I think it's our generation that has a specific purpose in reacting to the falls of these institutions, whether it's political or religious. Like, you know, it all feels like the same thing. These old institutions that have gotten rotten to the core, that are just still ruling, and we're all just here being like, what are we gonna do about this fucking shit? Like, this shit is falling down, and all these people who we're inheriting the earth from, like, they seem to not even, you seem to be like totally blind to it, or they don't even care, or they maybe it's because maybe they don't see it, right? It's
just fear of change too. You know?
Maybe they can't teach an old dog new tricks or something. I don't know, but like that's what it feels like. I mean, for example, from the Catholic Church, you know, like, and we hear about all these the institutions in Washington about these pedophilia rings, and then the pedophilia rings in the Vatican, and it's just like, these institutions are broken. Like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do about this shit? Like, do we have this soft this
We're
this
we're asking the people that keep everything in check to check themselves, and obviously they're not going to do that, and that's the part that sucks. It's like, who do you ask in the Catholic Church or in the Vatican to take care of that? Because they're all a part of it. You know what I mean?
right.
It's like
Who's going to
it's like
reform them?
it's like asking coronavirus to go away.
Right.
It's just like, like you're asking the head of the problem to change it, and it's like it's an impossible task, and with an impossible answer. Like there's no abolishment that's going to happen. They're not just going to kick out every priest and close up shop, and I think that's part of the problem. And I think those systemic issues exist in America with like the NRA and gun rights and like all that stuff. And I think the NRA and like gun rights are like a very niche and easy thing to target, but I think there are people in leadership that believe in this. So we're going to continue to go through this very strange phase of like mass shootings and where do gun rights belong, as opposed to like just addressing the issue at its core.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's so many. You could go down the line, just the divisiveness and with every single issue though, with the divisiveness, there is this consensus of a solution, a simple and common sense solution for almost everything that the majority of Americans agree upon. And that's what blew my mind when I remember reading these. I forget. I think it was Princeton, or I forget what it was. This meta study of studying essentially who does Congress work for? Who do the politicians work for? Right. Whenever they vote for something, is it on behalf of the the middle class or the lower class, or is it on behalf of the upper class and the 1% and everything? And overwhelming all the evidence and data is overwhelmingly shows you, and you can just see this by just looking at how Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or whoever it is campaigns. Who are they targeting to get for funding, to get their funding? Who are they actually caring about? When real protesters come to talk about real issues at these types of events with Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or whatever, they're shamed and they're silenced and they're thrown like that they just don't like the idea of a limousine liberal exists, and they don't it's such a weird party propaganda that these people continue to people are just so pit against each other, and like I said, when I talk to people, I think the key is to just empathize with folks and not talk about politicians, because
not genreize where they're coming
as
from.
As soon as you talk to someone on the right and you're like, oh, AOC's, and they're gonna be like, AOC, fuck AOC, she's a bitch, she's so stupid, she doesn't know what's going on, and they'd be like, but if I talk to them about the wealth tax or just some basic concepts of the infrastructure, changing the infrastructure, like all these ideas, like you talk about the Green New Deal, but you don't say Green New Deal, right? And
right.
And most Americans agree, or like you talk about removing this insane profit motive for the private healthcare industry and medicinal pharmaceutical market stuff. Most people agree with that. They want to decouple the healthcare from jobs, from employers. They want to see these improvements. Actually, Medicare for all is like even has above. There's been some polls that show it's above 50% approval rating for Republicans. So it's like these concepts and these ideas, I think, are the way to bridge the people together. Like we have to focus on the solutions and the common sense things, and people are just so focused on the things they hate and the things that make them afraid. And that's why this whole pandemic has just, it's hard to know if we're just being pushed further into a corner, or if we're actually going to be reacting. Like, is this the low? I don't know. I think because the epidemic or the pandemic wasn't, at least as it stands now, wasn't as cataclysmic as those original projections, right? That we flattened the curve, and it's not like 5% mortality rate, which some people are saying it could be, right? Like, which would be absolutely devastating, right? So it's I don't know, it's hard to tell with some of the stuff, but
Yeah.
I think there are common sense solutions, and that's what's really frustrating is people are so angry at each other, but meanwhile they're getting screwed just constantly, and all they have to do is agree on something and come together and be like, okay, then they both turn to their politicians and say, we agree with this, you must do this now. And they have to, and they'll have to. You know what I mean? As soon as this stuff, like we've experienced this too, like we have, when it comes to whether it's in a lot of social issues like gay marriage and the legalization of cannabis, although it's not fully done the federal, it's basically there. Like, I don't understand how. Seems mind numbing to me to understand how the Wisconsin legislature like hasn't.
I don't know.
Just because
we're about to be boxed in.
Yeah, we are. We're boxed in by. But the point being, we've seen these movements to be able to take over, and then all of a sudden it becomes part of the zeitgeist, and it becomes like a obvious solution, And I hope that something like Medicare for all, I think, is becoming something like that. Whereas, where things like that, where it's like, okay, though we can find these solutions, we need to be focusing on the solutions and the things that everyone agrees on, because like I said, when it comes to voting, most people are in favor of a national holiday. Overwhelming nature's like, you want to ritualize this? Make it fucking real. Make a voter day. Make it a party. Everyone, make it like 4th of July, dude. Like, how come we're not voting on fucking 4th of July? You know what I mean? Like, how yeah, it's just that idea. Like, obviously there's probably weird timings that you have to do for voting, but like, make it something like that. Like, people, just imagine if we had something like that, how it would galvanize people, how it would change the culture, how it would do it. And we're due for some fucking amendments to our Constitution. And I hope that it doesn't seem like there's any movement in the status quo when it comes to like this. They don't even seem to give a fuck about.
I do think this is the beginning of that. It's just hard, like I said, for us to see too far into the future and like address change that isn't in our face. It sucks. I think that's our biggest flaw as a human race in modern society is like modern problems are long lasting and they're overarching, and we're built to solve problems like how to make fire and where to get food.
Mm-hmm.
We're not built for the next level. Right. And we're changing and we're evolving into that. We're not there yet.
Yeah, politics is a weird social, and yeah, like you were talking about earlier, how it being coupled and totally run by a marketplace ideology, right? So like that's the one main difference that I've noticed in people that are left or people who consider themselves left or consider themselves right, is a lot of people on the right believe that, and this comes down to a difference of fundamentals of economics. I think the role of government with economics is that people on the right think that the marketplace gets corrupted by government, and people on the left think that the government gets corrupted by the marketplace. You know what I mean? And right. And I feel, I don't know. That's one, when it comes to economics, like I tend to go more on the other side. Like, I think democracy can exist without capitalism. It can exist without communism. It can exist with all, like, it can exist with, without, I don't know. I don't see democracy. I don't know. I've been reading more about democracy now and seeing it all play out now. I'm just like, I don't know if democracy is even right. It doesn't seem to be working out. Like, it's so easy to have demagogues, right? Democracy is, we have demagoguery or whatever, where like people who just prey off of the masses' ignorance. And if we don't have an educated, healthy population, we will never have a healthy democracy. It's just a reflection of each one of us. And that's why with this crisis, it's really interesting, where I hope that at least Mother Earth and people who we're faced with these new questions, and we're faced with ourselves, being alone with ourselves in not being in shelter in place. And I hope that people have used this for a time of reflection, but
Me too.
Maybe
I hope artists are more specifically. I hope they're finding themselves and like hopefully being more reinforceful with what they're doing and the path that they chose, as opposed to feeling like a failure, which is kind of like the what I've been struggling with is in between like the self motivation, like a
sure.
Marine, and like feeling like you've lost it all. But we haven't lost it yet. It's not all gone.
No, there's so many things to be grateful for and thankful for that we have.
Yeah.
And I mean that's the thing is it's easy to it's really easy to complain about everything and it's cathartic and there seems to be so many reasons why and like it's very frustrating, you know. So I feel like there's plenty of right to complain because we're trying to find solutions for the betterment of, you know, we're trying to do the primal thing of what humans are supposed to be doing, and that is to perpetuate our existence, right? And a lot like
Right.
and do it in a way where we can grow and be better and change. And that's what's crazy about our generation, man, is that we're the first generation with a lower life expectancy in I think in American history. And maybe, you know, maybe you save like the Civil War or something, but I don't. I at least in the past few generations for sure, and that's kind of mind blowing. That like with the rise of incredible medical technologies that can bring back people from the fucking dead, you know, and all these crazy understandings of the human body and survival. It's like it doesn't matter. Like we're being inundated with despair,
Yeah.
and it's toxic it's toxic to the culture, and you know I hear that. Like I think it's our generation, like we were saying earlier, like we're raised in this idea of like observing and being the first generation to be aware, have the awareness of the rot of the institutions. And it's like, what are we gonna do? That's how I feel. It's like, what are we doing here? Are we gonna work together and make a fucking future that we can all believe in, or are we all gonna just blame things and yell at each other and continue to make the same mistakes? And you know, like you're saying, the role of the artist is the role of the artist has those things in mind, I think, to try and communicate these concepts and the ideas of, okay, how do we change the myths? How do we get people to stop?
Right.
How do we get people to stop thinking about each other as their neighbors, as their enemies? And how do we get people to start coming together for the common, you know, betterment of each other? Because there is so much that we agree on, and so much, and it seems like it's just this giant behemoth, like David and Goliath type thing, right? These giant industry, like especially with the wealth inequality, like, oh my God, like Jeff Bezos has $70 billion or something and owns newspapers, and Bloomberg owns they own media conglomerates, and they can just weave these myths and threads and change people's whole psyches in matters of months if they really want to. Not even, they could probably change, like we've seen people's entire, like the collective psyche just shift with this crisis, right? Like shift, and as soon as that shift started happening, like like people, it's a grab bag, you know, but for all the people who have access to the bag, you know, and we're just getting the crumbs, you know. So
We're getting crumbs, government scraps.
but it's our money to begin with. That's the thing, you know. But at this rate, maybe not, because it seems like the 1% of people own more wealth. So it might still be a lot of theirs. But it's like they shouldn't have had that to begin with. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
like oh man.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think an artist can do to try to push the culture in the right direction? Like,
I think just there's no right way. It's just like holding strong and still being like a positive influence on the community, and like, you know, whatever they think is right, just like being a spokesperson for that.
mm-hmm.
And everyone's going to do it differently, and I think that's okay. And I think that's the role of artists, like you said, is to just do it differently and do it proudly and be confident in their message. But just like as
Right.
long as they're faithful to it, it like whether it's to stay inside or not, to keep creating and keep influencing. I think influencers like you and I and like all the artists in Milwaukee are looked at now more than ever. because we push out content. We're entertainers in that way. So I think what we say has a lot more weight to it now more than ever, just because so many people are just online consuming.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of this, I was very outspoken about like what I believed in. And now that it's May 14th, I'm realizing that it doesn't matter what you believe in as long as you're doing it for what you think is the right reason. And I wish we could get back to that. I don't know if we've ever been at that in my lifetime, but I wish we could get back to that, because I think we were there once upon a time, maybe during the boomer generation.
I mean, like,
but I don't know.
staying true, or like,
Just like I believe what I'm doing is like bettering myself and the people around me, and
sure,
just leaving it at that.
like
And
having like a belief in a purpose or something, like some.
yeah, like a personal and greater. Well, not necessarily spiritual, but like like my job. Like
Yeah,
I'm a firefighter. I save people. Like just I'm a photographer. I help document people's lives, and like
I would
just
consider
being
that
grateful for
spiritual.
those things. And
It's like a vocational aspect of approaching life as opposed to career. Like, this is my career. This is what I do to make money. It's like, well, what do you
yeah,
do? Why do you even do it? Like, why are you even doing the things you do? That, if it's just for money, I guess, if you are just a capitalist and you just want to collect money and
which is fine.
yeah,
That's
if you
totally
want to,
fine.
there's people collect money. People collect crazy things,
Right.
but yeah, that,
Yeah, influencers have a big job right now, and I think the worst thing you can do is be entirely silent. And I'm trying to not be
yeah.
that. I think that's the worst thing we could do as artists. The best thing we can do is keep communicating the messages, the positive messages that we believe, to the people around us and to our audiences, and just see what happens. Take it as it comes. I'm really scared that things are going to change even a week from now, 2 weeks from
Right.
now. So it's hard to just to like stay informed, I guess.
Yeah, things are changing so fast, like with everything opening up and stuff. And yeah, I agree though. I would have to say that, the artist's role to have a message, to stay true to it, and to perpetuate that, and continually show people how a world is possible, like, with certain ideas. And I mean, I think that, yeah, it's not just everyone. I guess it takes an artist to do that, but I think anyone can do that. And it's like you said, the answer, like you said, I think it's just the first, when you respond to one of the first words you said was community. And I feel like that really matters. Like, the more so than ever, I feel like, because we're on the internet and we have these like communities who can span across the globe, we're in this interesting perspective where, I don't know, this is how I feel in my life, where it's like I live this dual nature of, like, when I'm online, I can connect with people anywhere and everywhere. But when I go outside, I see the incredible value of a local economy, like, or ecology, like a local ecology of people, where, like, we were just talking earlier about going to shows and artists coming together and helping each other out and being able to lift each other up with the collective wealth of what people do. If someone does well in the community, they should be spreading that to everywhere else. If someone is succeeding, like, they should, or if someone has something to offer, they should they should be giving it, and to be able to empower others to be able to do it. So, like, for, I don't know, and photographers have I mean, you can't, there's no shows, right? I mean, you do a lot of different photography, but I've used that photo shoot we did with the turtleneck, and that red photo of mine, like, looking off, like, is the perfect. I've put that on every single platform.
I saw that. That's
like,
awesome.
Literally everywhere, because it was just
super honored.
It's such a good portrait. It really is.
Thank you.
And it's I don't know. It's something that I feel really comfortable and, like, really confident in putting that on everything, because it just happened. I put it on one thing, and then I was like, I like the way that looks. And then all of a sudden I just put it on everything. I was like, okay, I'll just put it wherever I found it. I just put it, and some platforms is tough, like, for profile photos and stuff, like, there's
with sizes and all that stuff.
There is no attribution, like, on my site and everything. I can put a caption and I can embed in the image, like, this photo taken by Samer, but when you put it on like Spotify or something and you upload a photo, there's nowhere to caption anything or to do
I'm
anything.
super okay with that stuff. I feel like whenever I discover my photos being used as like a Spotify playlist or artist, I'm like, hell yeah, that's tight. I
Yeah.
love it. It's like a little secret.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a
I
weird
like that
one.
kind of stuff,
Because
just like happening upon it.
because it's such a strange medium of that in that regards of like, I don't know. I guess you can search for images with Google image search, right? And you could probably like find who took it or whatever. But with audio, you can like Shazam it and you can know who it is. And
Right.
or like film, you can do the same thing. Yeah, you can search it and stuff, I suppose. But that's such a how do you navigate that when it comes to like attribution and how much of
Okay.
a
I
stickler
have a
are you?
really good answer to that. Do you mind if I use the bathroom quick?
Yeah,
My
go
apologies.
for
I
it.
have to pee so bad.
Let it rip,
All
dude.
right, I'll be right back.
Just letting it rip. Let's see if we can do this thing. How's everybody doing out there? We got a bathroom break happening. Sammer has to tinkle. How's everybody doing on YouTube and Twitch and Facebook out there? You guys doing all right? Everybody's doing all right out there? You're keeping safe. Oh, there's the bell. The clock strikes 7 p.m. We got True Heads on Twitch. Says tell Sammer Junkyard Ben says hello. Hey True Heads, thanks for stopping by. If you're on Twitch, give me a like. I'm almost at 50. Anyone on Twitch here, if you don't follow, please consider following because I'm almost at 50, and then I can be an affiliate, and then that's everyone needs the 50. Everyone needs to at least reach 50 on Twitch. Hey Smokey, how's it going on YouTube? How you doing? Hey Leah on Twitch. Yeah, interesting discussion. He's a photographer, we're just talking about society and all this stuff. The key to these like color casts is that everything is just kind of conversational style. So it's you never know where you're gonna end up talking about. We got him
There's
back.
age old question. Yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Age old question for me when I first started was why I don't watermark my photos. And if you're using Lightroom or Photoshop, you can actually embed like your name into the metadata of the file. So if
Right.
someone were to like take my work and use it like for whatever, like for their claim it was their own or anything like that, I could actually download that file, put it back into Lightroom or Photoshop and see in the metadata, or if you're like on a Mac and you right click and get more info, my name will actually be in the metadata of that file. And the only way you'd be able to steal my work is if you screenshotted it, but the resolution will be like way lower than the original file. So
Yeah.
it's still a way to prove that stuff. So like when artists are using my photo for like their Spotify or Apple, I don't necessarily feel like it's like a injustice for me not to have the credit. But if like, if one of the artists that I've supported ended up popping off and becoming huge, their label or whatever would know who took all of those photos because like they would be legally obligated to make sure that all the rights were are all the rights to all the photos that they have and all the album art that they have from all their graphic designers, all of them, the videographers who made music videos. So like I don't feel like I get lost in translation there. I feel like the only time I do get lost in translation is when people choose not to tag me in a photo when they have the opportunity to. And I used to get really upset about that when I first started because it was a small brain problem, it was a smooth brain problem. But I don't anymore. I think when people choose not to tag their photographers, though, they're just missing out on another audience that they wouldn't normally reach. And it's like, dude, I'm trying to help you. Like,
Oh man. Yeah. Every time I have a photo, I tag you and you share it.
yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. It's
yeah,
like I'm trying to help you here. Like I don't know. That's the only time I get kind of like confused. I used to get really upset about it, but that was like, you know, a small. I was a small fish, upset about small problems. Not that I'm a big fish by any means. But
ambiguous size fish. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I hear what you're saying. The metadata that can go a long way for sharing a photo, but the metadata can be replaced, if because a lot of sites you upload images to, they have image processing software that they do where they'll like cut it into a bunch of different sizes and re-encode it in different ways, and a lot of the metadata could be removed. And that's like, yeah, if someone goes on Facebook, downloads like the preview of it, it might not have the metadata in it, it might be poor resolution like you mentioned. But yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? Like, I'm just curious because, that's my model of my music is attribution. So like when people use my music, all I ask is that they do attribution, but a lot of times that just doesn't end up being what happens. Like people don't use it, or they do use it, and then it gets lost down the line where they sent it to a client and then the client reused it and then stripped the description, and then they sent it. It was like, okay, well, they still use it and people still listen to my music. That's the worst case. Oh, someone listened to my music. Whatever shall I do?
Yeah, right. Like,
well, I get
I
it.
was actually just listening to your episode with Paper Holland, and you were kind of talking about that, and like they were asking about like, have you ever had YouTubers or someone use it that you didn't necessarily maybe agree with or want to use it? And I loved your answer to that, and I'm glad it was no for the most part. Like I'm glad that
Yeah.
like you haven't been put in a situation like that. But I just think there was especially in Milwaukee, specifically with like Milwaukee art, there was like this maybe uneducated or ignorance, like not necessarily in a negative way, but there was just like, I'm not going to credit the photographer because no one cares. This is a photo of
Right.
me as an artist, like and once upon a time we used to not credit like journalists and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
And I think we're all still learning as a society of artists that
That's
are
a good point.
growing what's the most appropriate etiquette. And I think people are now, luckily, people are realizing when they don't credit the artists that contributed to a project, or like don't credit the musician for the music video or for the music that they're playing over their
Right.
video, like they're just losing out on audience. They're just losing, and that's what everyone wants being online, right? Is a bigger audience. If you're an artist or entrepreneur, you want to be able to reach more people with your message. And I think people are starting to realize when they don't list people like us, like service industry artists, they're missing out. And I think that's good. It's good etiquette to learn.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about the change in culture, because now it's like photographers, there's so much more freelance hustlers than there's ever been, and so like attribution is almost a currency at this point. And so when people ignore that, they're either missing out or they don't understand that real value. Like, and a lot of people, and I'll admit, like I've posted things and I forget, or like after the 20th time, posting it, and it's just like
totally natural.
I'm just like, it's an extra step to do something, or sometimes I'll just be like, I just need to get this post out, boom, 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 and then I'll go back later and be like, shit, I should have cut. And it's like, oh well, it's not, okay, well it's and then it's like, oh well, I credited them in the post but not in the link to the post, and oh shit, and so as long as people are doing their best to do that. But I think the fundamental issue, or the fundamental like thing that people should take from that is, you reap what you sow. I think like what comes around goes around. If you want to if you want to get tagged and you want to get some cross promotion and you want to expect other people to credit you, what, and yet you're not crediting other people, like that's not how the world works. You know what I mean? Like I tell people it's just bad juju. Like forever bad juju on you if you do this on purpose. You know what I mean?
Forever bad juju.
like you're not gonna succeed. Like curses on you.
It would make me like not want to work with them, and it would make you not want to like continue to provide music to that
Especially
YouTuber, like that. Stuff like that.
Especially if they were, like I've had YouTubers where I've asked, like there's a big YouTuber from England who like would use my music in a couple things, and then one time I saw that he used it but didn't give credit. Or like there's a whole like long Snapchat story with like his hundreds of thousands of followers and stuff, that this long thing that was just for this one platform but no credit, right? And it's like, okay, well, people can experience that. And actually I just saw a comment from someone that was like, I looked so hard to find this photo and find this song, and I finally found you, and I'm here, and I've been here for a year, and I'm so happy. And I'm just like, oh hell yeah! Like if anything, it's kind of like if you feel compelled by this photo, or if you feel compelled by this piece of art or this music, like, and you really find it, I guess in a way it's really satisfying at the end, right? And you get one really dedicated fan.
For
That's-
sure.
and, you know, and I don't know, like that's still more one dedicated fan than I didn't have before. So, like the and I get it. And so I messaged the guy and I was like, hey, like, thanks for, I'm super honored. Like, honestly, when you do this, and I just, the way I described it to him was like, honestly, when you give credit, I see a huge bump in all my stuff. So, like, please do this every time because it, like, I'm giving you this stuff for free. Like, and you're making money off of it. You're surviving. Like, I know, like, you pump out content constantly. Every day you got a new YouTube video and a new Instagram thing. And it's like, but when you can, if you can remember, just, you know, give credit when you can, and that's really all you can do. All you can do is just like kind of hope and rely on people's good nature. And I think if I think there's something beautiful about that, where it's like everyone's liberty to to be as connected to the folks that enrich themselves and their lives. Like, that's up to you. And some people just aren't aware. I think a lot of people just aren't aware of how much that makes a difference. I like, you
Yeah,
know,
I agree with that. I think they're unaware of how much, like, I think artists underestimate how excited people are to see people in their community collaborate. You know, and I
mm,
think more people are excited to see like a quality music video or photo or song that was like made within their community with someone else in their community that they know.
right,
And I think when I take a picture of someone, I like to think, I don't know for a fact, but like if I'm taking pictures for all these Milwaukee artists, for a lot of Milwaukee artists, and people see that my name's like tagged in it, they're excited to know that that person and I got to work together. I think my
right,
audience gets excited about stuff like that. They're like, dang, he did that, or like he knows that person, like that's really cool. And I think the biggest, like the few instances that I've seen that happen the most with are with Schlee and Classic. I think people are stoked to go to Schlee shows to see Schlee, and they're excited to see me poking around the crowd. They know
right,
that that's
right.
going to be a thing, you know. And I think they're excited about those types of collaborations. And like one time I was at company for a show and someone came up to me, he was like, you take photos for Classic, right? And I was like, yeah, totally. He was like, that's awesome. And I think people get excited about
Hmm.
like that collaboration. And I think when you don't credit the musician or you don't credit the photographer or videographer, you're like taking that away from the audience. You're taking that like bit of excitement away
Yeah,
from the community. And I think it's definitely unintentional, and it comes from a place of like, you know, maybe crediting someone doesn't fit in the vibe of the post. And I get that too, because like even social media in itself is a form of art. But I think people, especially in Milwaukee being a foodie city, Milwaukee being like a local music city, like people get excited about those collaborations. And I think when we don't credit that, we're taking that away. And that's important. It's important. It's important for people to know who had their hand in all of these things, because you know, my hopefully my audience is reaching artists that they would have never, and vice versa. And that's kind of the point, right? To your point, it's like me paying it forward, and it's like them paying it
right.
forward, and like with other avenues that aren't currency. It's important for a lot of reasons. And I think it to people who aren't artists but choose to support, like people who aren't musicians but go to shows a lot, I think it reinforces the fact that they're not wasting their money too, and it reinforces the fact that like they're investing in something that has stability outside of themselves. And
Yeah.
it all takes a lot of little things to make that a reality. I think we do in Milwaukee, we do a really good job of that. We're short-sighted on a lot of things, but we do see the necessity in supporting each other as artists, and it goes a long way.
So why do you think? I don't know. Can you? Why do you think that person came up and was super stoked about you in Classic, like working together? Like, why do you think? Why do you think the the lovers of art and the people who patron the art scene in Milwaukee, and you know, why do you think they like this collaboration? What, I don't know. Why do you think?
I don't necessarily know either. I think maybe because if I were to take a guess, I'm assuming that person was a fan of Classic for a long time and stumbled upon my stuff and then recognized me as like a person out in the world. Or I think vice versa, they might have been a fan of my stuff and saw that I shot for Classic, and I think it's more the former than the latter. And I think people get excited when they see these artists who are invoking change in the community. It's almost celebrity like, but it's better because these are accessible people with normal personalities that you can talk to like a
Right.
normal person.
Milwaukee
And I think that's
level.
important. And I think that's important for
Yeah.
Milwaukee, is to have these types of
Accessible.
personalities walking around. And now there's hundreds of us. There's absolutely hundreds of us, and it's great. And
Yeah.
I think that person was excited because of the collaboration. I don't know though. I think a lot of people come up to me when in the old world, a lot of people would come up to me all the time whenever I was anywhere, like because they recognize me because of how many artists I do work with. And there was always so much excitement behind like just talking to me about the craft and talking to me about local music and stuff like that. And I don't necessarily know where that inertia of excitement comes from, but I'm very grateful and blessed to be a part of that kind of community, I suppose.
Yeah, no doubt, man. That's one thing that I discovered because I grew up in the suburbs of Milwaukee, with really no sense of artistic community or of like peers stuff. I had friends and stuff who were like minded, but they and in some ways, but they weren't artists. And I had one friend who was, his mother was an artist, and he's an engineer and artist and stuff. So we hit it off really well and learned, and like really, it was just really kind of him and me, and he was really the only outlet I had for that, and other than my own personal exploration. And that continued through grade school, high school, and into college, where I went to Marquette, which is this other bubble, culturalist bubble, of like, I was a computer engineer and had 20 people in my class. They're all, half of them are afraid to speak. And they're super smart. But just really socially awkward and kind of, I don't know, they weren't artists, let's just say, and I had just been so thirsty and hungry for a community like that, and really wanted to find that. And it was just, so I'd see people on the around campus, a person wearing a Tribe Called Quest shirt, and I just run up to him and be like, "Oh my God, you love Tribe Called Quest? Like, they're amazing." And the person would be like, "Yeah, they're great." And I'd just be like trying to keep talking to him, and then I feel this awkwardness, and I'm like, this person doesn't want to talk to me. What the fuck? Fuck this
Man, that
asshole.
happens to me all the time with Blink-182 shirts, and every one of my friends makes fun of me for it. And I'm like, no, dude, Blink-182 is awesome, and that person is awesome for wearing that shit. And I used to have a hard time in the same sense before I started shooting shows. I kept running into people like that and trying to make those connections, and it just didn't. It was ingenuine, and people also hate meeting new people for one reason or another. So
Yeah, I
like,
think a lot of it was the lack of confidence in my own self and like desperation, right? Like there was this
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and people can smell
absolutely.
that and they'll be like, "Oh, what does this guy want?" Like,
Yeah, so like I
they're
just
like,
got dressed as a Blink-182 weenie, and like, which I
yeah,
still am at 27. But
yeah, but
adversely, when I was running around Winter Skull music festival, I was like having a freaking blast,
yeah, that was a
because like
fun day, dude.
every time I ran into somebody, I was like, they were all excited and I was excited, and like it was just, it felt home. And I think the
Yeah,
Milwaukee music scene, as much or like the art scene at large, as it's always going to have its like trials, and without those trials or adversity, like we wouldn't grow as a community. But it does feel like home, running into like you, and running into Sister Strings, and running into Johanna, and like running into Andy Kosenki and Joe Tomchek and Mark, and like all like Amanda Huff, and like everyone, like Will Rose, and like all these people, like I could name, and to other shooters like Josh Harder or Steven Robinson or Gonzalez Visuals, and like all these other people,
mm-hmm.
like being able to see all those people at one place for like what felt like the last thing I did before this new world,
Yeah,
that was awesome. And I miss that. And I think that it's moments like those that are the most rewarding. And like I was saying earlier, the closest thing that I was able to do during quarantine was to participate in that Forward Music Festival, and just see not only how much money people donated because they care about places like Cactus, but to just see how many people were just talking in that chat feed on Instagram, and how excited they were, and to like be seeing some of their favorite artists. And that was like a taste of it, man. It was like a taste of
yeah,
it. But to like what you said earlier, like I miss it so much. and I realized how much I needed it, how much I need it. Just going to shows and documenting and being there for people, but being needed. Maybe that's what all artists
Yeah.
yearn for in a way, is like being needed, I think. And I think a lot of us are feeling the pressure of not being needed. And I guess I'm just now realizing it as I say it, that it just sucks,
Yeah,
you
man.
know?
It feels like the rug's pulled from under us, but there were those live stream, like you had that little taste of it, and it's fun, and like that's what I've been doing. I've just been live streaming, and so like
Hell yeah.
I get my little taste. Like tomorrow I'm doing a live stream, and some of the people who are on here today, I just saw Treach on YouTube. What's up, Treach? Like the I've been able to just try and build that, and like I had a live stream album release. Like in a way, this all stuff, everything happens the way it should, right? And like we're all learning, and we're all trying to figure out, like you said, like these trials are very important, and so we all get to think about that, and we all get to say like, oh yeah, we're really lucky to have this community that we can be a part of. Because as soon as I joined the Milwaukee scene, it was just like, as soon as I got into it, it was like about 3 years ago, and like really just dove in, just moved to River West, went to every single show I could go to, just constantly. Just like, that's my job now, is to network and just to like figure out the scene. Where are all the things going on? And I had no idea what I was going to expect. But my goal was like, okay, I've been here my whole life. I don't know anything about. I couldn't even name you a local artist. You know what I mean? Like eventually I learned the fatty acids, and then that was like
Hell yeah.
that was like the first thing I
Hell
knew.
yeah.
And then all of a sudden, from there I started going from place to place and place to place, and learning just so much and getting to know it. And I miss that to a lot. Like even before the shelter in place, like so busy with building my own shit and like performing all the time, that I definitely like miss going out to shows, because I've been talking about this phenomenon with people lately, about how valuable like going to these shows are for me, not just from a community perspective, but from like, I will go to these shows and I'll see my friends or some new people that I've never met that blow me away. And I get to, usually when I go to shows and stuff and watch performers, I'm very analytical. I'm very like cerebral. I'll be like, what are they doing over there? What kind of techniques are they using? What is this? And what kind of instruments? What's the sound guy? Like I remember when going to shows, I'd just be looking at everything, trying to just dissect it all to see if like, can I do that? How did they do that? Should I do that? Is that a good way to do things? Like doing all this stuff. And I just started to teach, like kind of condition myself to always, and this is maybe just how I think, because I get so excited when I'm in these musical settings, and just the energies are flowing. It's really strong. And so I was able to go to shows and have moments where I can just go off of myself, just enjoy the music, just by myself, not worrying about networking or talking to anyone. And I'll be able to think about stuff that I'm thinking about. Just like my mind starts to wander. And then all of a sudden, all these things that I've been journaling about, or like problems I've been trying to solve, all of a sudden things start clicking, things start connecting. And all of a sudden, boom, this like eureka moment of like, oh, I need to do this in conjunction with that, make it like this. I'm like, oh shit, like that's it. I've been struggling with this idea and it never really formulated, and I've been thinking through it, and here I am in these moments. Or I'll catch myself in these shows when I'm catch myself just laughing audibly because the music is loud and people are enjoying it and they're immersed, and I just like smile and laugh, and then see the performer go into a crescendo or some like climax, and I'll just be like, whoa. And I can't help but think like, oh my gosh, like this is completely connected. Like this state of the way I was able to get into this trance or get into this thing, how I'm channeling, is directly related to this performance and this environment that I'm in, and these energies that are happening in this community. I think that's what everyone feels when they go to shows, whether you're a musician or artist or not. You have these experiences. People have these experiences, and I think that's what people are feeling, like this sense of not just purpose, but like this spiritual value of these things are gone. Like I went the other day into the River West Garden and played some guitar with someone, and And I was like, this is the first time I'm playing with someone in like months, you know, like this is the first human jam. Like, well, that's not true. My roommate is a musician, and we jammed on my birthday,
Nice.
but like, you know what I mean? Like that's it. Like I don't. I was like,
There
it
is
was
like a
weird.
an endorphin that releases in your brain when you're watching live music, when you're starting to feel it, when you're really into it.
Right.
An artist, I recently went to a show, and I guess not recently anymore, in like December, and he was talking about that, about how there's like this sense of togetherness when you're at a
Mm-hmm.
show, especially when it's like a big act that you love. Apparently there's these endorphins that release in everyone's brain, and like everyone's like brain chemicals start
Yeah,
to
dude.
align, like they're all like together, like in this weird, to your point, like spiritual connectedness listening to live music. And like I don't think that there's a lot of things that can do that like live
Mm.
music does. Like movies can't. Movies try so hard, and shows try so hard to like replicate those feelings through actors and shit, but actors are people playing the part of people you want to care about, whereas musicians are always going to be people
Mm.
who are like, for the most part.
Yeah,
So
they represent that person. They are that
yeah,
person. like
yeah,
like as
exactly.
opposed to representing. But I mean, yeah, I mean a lot of people I think view musician, I don't know. It's the way that I look at it too is like people come up to me and they get really moved by certain songs, and they'll project a lot of their emotions that they feel in that, with their understanding of who I am. And like when they meet me, I can feel this like this deeper thing within them that they kind of like bring forward, and they like kind of bring to me, and I can feel it, and I could be like, oh shit, like, and it's a beautiful thing, but at the same time it's like, I'm not this deep feeling within you, that's you. But like, yeah, the song might have been able to like show you, shine a light on it, or maybe like show you that part of who you are or something. But that's what's I've read that same stuff about shows, man, about how everyone just gets in this like collective trance, and I really think it is a spiritual thing. Like, we're talking about the collapse of institutions and the rise of artists and stuff, right? Like, I think that's like, I'll go to a show, like the last big show that I went to, was Hosier a while back now,
Nice.
at the rave, or at the Eagles Ballroom. And that felt like a huge like, everyone was singing along these points. Like, that guy really, he thanked every single person in his crew, every single person who like worked at the Eagles Club. Like, he had a whole list. He like, I'm like, did you memorize this? Like, what? How? Like, that's, talk about giving credit, right? Like, this guy is doing all the things he needs to do to live up to these ideals that you can hear him singing about, right? And you can feel it in the songs and in his songwriting and stuff. And everyone knows that, right? So everyone is in that same mindset, being like, here we are. And I was seeing so many people just being totally moved, and I'm a big fan of Hosier, but I'm not like like this giant mega fan like a lot of people are. But I felt it, and I could see people having deeper experiences than I was. But it was still really, really incredible. And that, like you said, when people come together for these things, like, I remember the first time that happened to me, I was in 8th grade, I think it was, or maybe I was a freshman in high school, and I saw the White Stripes after their Get Behind Me Satan album came out, and they came to the rave. And when I saw Jack White walk out on the stage, like, something in me like changed. I was like, oh my God, there's that
I
person. There's
I
that
know it's
yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly that feeling. I think the show that changed for me, I saw Angels and Airways open for Weezer, and it
Nice.
was like monumental for me to see like Tom DeLonge as like a Blink-182 weenie like perform live, but then like to see Weezer, which, whether you agree with it or not, is like one of the best like punk
Yeah.
rock, pop punk, whatever you want to consider them, indie rock bands of all time. Like, they changed the landscape, I feel like, right alongside Green Day. So like, me, 7th grade, like experiencing that was just absolutely mind blowing. So
It's like
And
I
that
can
that change.
experience this because I grew up in a family. We go to Catholic church and shit. And we go to sometimes we go to big worship things and on Easter and Christmas and stuff. And it always felt so stale and weird and gross and like forced and like
Yeah.
and there was no, even the songs were lame. Like it was like, this is a good song, but how it's not really fucking slapping right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whereas you go somewhere where there's a great choir and stuff, and it's like, okay, like shit, like that, that's how important music really is to to these experiences, right? Like, and of course, yeah, that's why I feel like maybe people look to, yeah, they don't, people don't have these institutions to rely on anymore, like marriage is dead. Like religion is dead, God is dead, like all these things we have to figure out, how we're going to rebirth all these concepts, right? How are we going to bring what value and meaning these institutions brought to our parents and our grandparents and stuff, like how are we going to shape the future with the rebirth of, like keeping the things that we need and omitting and tossing aside the things that we don't. And yeah, I don't know, we just got to keep conjuring it up. I got a lot of ideas. I'm sure you
Yeah.
did. I'm
No,
sure.
me. And that's good. Like we should, you and I, people like you and I, and the rest of our like fellow artists, and we should have good ideas, and we should let them fail when they fail. And like that's the failure is step one is like accountability, and failure is like learning from it and addressing it, and step two is like learning and growing from it. You know, and
Absolutely.
I think we all have a social responsibility, and I realized that in 2018 I realized that like the social responsibility I was starting to get, maybe it was like self enriched, like I was like putting that pressure on myself for better or for worse. But I do think we do have a social responsibility to like spread positive messages that we truly believe that come from within. And I think the only thing we need to do is like an artist collective is like be open to being wrong too. And I think that if we defend the messages that we believe so ignorantly and so narrowly that we don't see other perspectives, we're just doing as much harm as politicians are. And I think like step
Hmm.
one is like being communicative, being open, and like continuing to spread. And step two is like being willing to change and like anchor and readjust and continue moving forward.
Yeah, that's a great point about failing, because that's what I felt like with this Cullah cast when I first started it. It was half the stuff, the streams were all garbled. You couldn't even hear it. The things weren't even, like it took me like a bunch of times to figure it out and really get it, like to really do it. And it's much easier doing these teleconferencing things. Honestly, I might just switch to this completely because it's just so much simpler. Because before I'd have to set up a table and set up the cameras and set up the mics and and control the video and look at the chat and be the guest and do all these things and like be constantly looking at the cameras and stuff. And it's a lot to deal with, and so it takes time to streamline those systems and stuff. And same with my live streaming, like bunch of live streaming. And that's why I haven't like had a fully like dedicated like scheduled live stream, which this Friday tomorrow will be the like beginning of setting everything up and doing it, schedule it, and making it every Friday.
Hell
But
yeah.
a lot of that is just failing out in the open, like doing these live streams and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. This doesn't work. I'm just gonna explore, or I'm just gonna mess around. I'm just gonna do the things that do the best that I can. There's only so many things like that I can do because I don't feel the same pressure and adrenaline in a live stream, although I'm starting to do it more. And the more that the community that's following me and joining these live streams with me, the more they stick around and the more that they're there. Actually, I feel more and more every live stream. I feel more and more of this like adrenaline and pressure, that of the performance adrenaline. Like, whereas when I go to a show, like it's on Winter Skull, it's like pretty obvious that there's all the people, like the Pabst tap room is full as it's ever
And
gotten.
you can like physically
Yeah,
feel
you
that
can
energy.
feel
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So it's really easy for me to like just be immersed in that and like let go, because those energies, because that's why it's really important to be an audience member, and a lot of people don't understand their roles as audience members and how much power that they have as the collective. But it's hard. Yeah, it's just an adjustment, you know. It's like something different where I have to try and find it within myself with these live streams. I have to try and find a way to feel that like channeling of creative energy in a live stream, which is it's a totally different challenge, you know.
Yeah, it's a different beast. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I saw that firsthand with at the Forward Music Festival. It just, when you see someone like Classic live, you feel Kellen's energy, right? And then when you see Classic do it on camera, not that it's any worse, but it's like, this is just different. And
right,
it's just different. And I think obviously I have that perspective from seeing him live so many times before seeing it. And he does it well live stream. He's like also another master of like the live streams, but it was just an example of like how different that beast is. And I think it almost comes down to like, when you're on stage, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're like being an entertainer and a musician. You're like playing the role of two people. When you're doing it online, you're playing the role of like a director, a choreographer, an entertainer, and a musician. Like it becomes more. And then there's no immediate like gauge of how well you're doing. You don't get that check that the audience allows you to have. Like there's no vibe check.
There's a few second delay. I'll do something, I'll look at the chat and it'll be like, nice. I'll be like, wait, it's saying nice for what I just did, or was that from a second ago?
Minutes ago. Yeah, exactly. There's no vibe check, so I can only imagine.
I'm gonna you know what, I'm gonna start doing the vibe checks. I'm gonna start doing vibe checks on the live streams. All right, is everybody vibe check right now? How's everybody out there? Whoever's there, how's your vibes? Are you vibing? If you're vibing, just show us your vibes. Just vibe it. Just vibe in the comments. But yeah, no, I hear you, man. That it's the changes in these times are strange, and obviously things are opening up, and everyone's gonna have to be very cautious as, you know, continuing to move forward. And like I think the initial panic and like fear, the worst case scenarios are kind of showing that maybe that, you know, we're not in the worst case scenario. So I think people are starting to like relax it, but we should be very cautious, obviously, like, and make sure that everyone wash your fucking hands. You know what I mean? Like, then before you go see grandma, especially, like, I don't know. Yeah. I was just chatting with my mom, and like, she had a fever for like about 24 hours, and you know, and I had just seen her for Mother's Day, and we both had the free test, and so I'm like, quarantine again until the test. I don't have any symptoms. I don't know. I'm just like trying to be caught, you know, make sure to take all the precautions of like, I was going to meet with some videographers to talk about things and like go for a walk with someone. I was just like, well, I guess not, no. You know, it's, you know, and she is feeling better now. She doesn't have a fever. She hasn't had a fever for almost 48 hours now. So I think she's in the clear in terms of that. So it's not anything terrible. And her fever never got over like 100 and something. So it was never really like, it wasn't serious, right? Like once it gets to like 102, it's really serious. But she's still really fatigued and her throat's devastating and she's not going to work. She's a nurse, right? So now she can't work. And so now, you know, and maybe when you're sick, you shouldn't, you know, you should be sleeping. But it just like, it brings back all those same fears and everything. It's like, I went and spent Mother's Day with her. Did me going home and spending Mother's Day, did I bring that shit in there? Did I, you know what I mean? Like I can't, those are the things that go through my mind. It's like, was, you know, what could this have been? Because, you know, it's so easy to get caught up in that fear and just go down the rabbit hole of all the scary thoughts and it just shows you how palpable this fear is and how it is everywhere. And so we're going to have to get over this. You know, we're all going to have to like calm down and like, as the data becomes clearer and the things become real, like, yeah, everyone, but it's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call. Like I was saying before, the United States has never experienced something like this since the Spanish flu. That's over 100 years ago, and we haven't really had this call to like crisis like this. You know, people are wondering like, how did South Korea like and China like deal with this so fast? It's like, well, they've been doing this year after year. Like they've been having these outbreaks multiple times. They never made it to America. We never had the infrastructure. Like we've been woefully ignorant about this, and we've never really had to have this call. Like someone mentioned that to me the other day about like, why did Europe has all these economic rights that we don't, even though like FDR and Teddy Roosevelt were talking about these same right, like the right to an education, or the right to healthcare, or the right to a house, all these things. Like our leaders have this has been, that's what gives me some hope, at least, is that like this has happened before. There's been times when there's, where we've had crisis, we've had epidemics, we've had income inequality, we've had these times, and culture has shifted, and it's changed, and our great leaders, the one, like FDR, ran all these very, very same concepts of like try and propose the second Bill of Rights of a right to a house and rights to these things, and he would have gotten elected again. Like if you he would have gotten elected for they had to change the rules so he didn't get elected again. Like that's how popular that was, of the person who really could galvanize the people and really be that fighter and really have. But he was also a patrician, right? He was really wealthy, and so he was able to be part of that elite class, be in that system, change that, and we can only hope that there's going to be hope if it's not too far gone, but it's going to take time. Like I think the shockwaves of this craziness is going to take years to recover from, psychologically, economically. It's going to take years. Like people are shook and terrified. Like I see people on social media just like calling each other murderers for going out to the grocery store. You know what I mean? Like it's like, dude, like you killed my grandpa because you went to the park.
Chose
you know
not
what I mean?
To stay home.
Yeah. Or pointing it at the protesters who want to open up the economy or whatever. It's like it's like I said, like I don't. That's what's weird about this type of virus, though, is that it's not like HIV or like heart disease.
It doesn't discriminate.
Right.
There's no discrimination. Yeah.
Well, it discriminates if you have access to healthcare or not, and or good healthcare. There's a lot of weird, a good doctor who knows what he's doing and stuff too. But yeah, I think I'm looking forward to the with every action there's opposite and equal reaction, right? With this time of crisis, you gotta, and this downward descent into this kind of underworld of that we're experiencing, right? This viral nature, like viruses don't give a fuck, right? Like they're based on ill will, like they're ready to conquer and take over to a degree, but we got to work with it, right? We got to figure out what it wants and give it what it wants and work with it, right? And that seems to be the way to adapt, right? Is to try and live with this, because and eventually, from what I understand of virology, and which isn't a lot, but antibodies and people will become immune, right? That's what's saying that it's very likely. The data's not out, but everyone was saying it's very likely, that once you get the herd immunity, it'll come back. It'll be like the flu, right? Comes back every so often and really affects the elderly and the immunocompromised. But for the average, 95 to 97% of people probably, maybe you get a shot, or maybe, people just need to focus on having healthy immune systems, and being healthy. And I think that does a lot more than worrying if you have a mask when you're walking in a park, Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
I entirely agree.
And
I eat like super clean, super healthy, and I have some vices that are not necessarily like entirely healthy, but I think the body is built to balance some of those things. I think that, and it does come back to like a balance, like
right.
Not that any vice is good for you at all. Not that I'm condoning any vice.
I don't know. You have to have the virtue. If you can't have the virtue without the vice, man, like.
Right.
Oscar Wilde said you should do everything in moderation, especially moderation.
I like that. I haven't heard that before.
It's a good way to. It's a good way to rationalize binging. You know what I mean? I don't know. Sometimes you need that. I don't know, but it's all in your perspective. So like I've heard people who are alcoholics have to hit rock bottom, or people who are addicts in general, like the majority of them, when they reach they have to reach this point of no other choice, right? And that's really sad, but like it shows you like, okay, if you're going to indulge in vice, you know, there's a spectrum, right? Like a virtue to vice. And if everyone's balanced, right, that's the key. You can overindulge in a vice 1 week if you clean up your act, you know, that next month. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it
go
sounds so perfect when you say it like that.
if you know. And I mean, I do that. You know, I occasionally I've been drinking less and less and less and less and less over the years since college, and every once in a while you just need to just get drunk and just be like, fuck it, and you feel terrible, but sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not. It's more often than not. It's more often not for me, but usually nowadays. But for my live streams on Fridays, I've been drinking whiskey, and it's been great.
Nice.
It's been great.
Nice.
I'm like giving myself that, you know, being. I miss that, honestly. I miss. I just haven't been drinking at all. Like I took a whole sober month in last November of just like from everything, and it just cleaned me out and changed a lot of things about how I like. I just don't have the appetite for alcohol as much anymore. It just hurts me, but I miss creating with a little bit of booze. You know what I mean? Like it's totally different when I'm drinking caffeine or indulging in some wacky tobacco. You know, like the things come out differently. But when I have a drink or have some whiskey or some wine, I definitely take more risks in certain aspects, and I just don't care, and I can like flow with things a little, you know. I'm not saying people that I need that to create or anything, or that it's a way to shift your consciousness, right?
Yeah, at least for a moment, right?
Right.
To like
For a
just
night.
experience it a little bit differently. I think that's fair. I think I tend to indulge in my vices when I'm creating a lot more than not. And I think I find that it helps me focus without the anxieties and per like very large scale problems that I have to deal with on a daily basis. You know, there are my own problems like debt and forward movement and fiscal responsibility and safety and stuff like that. And I find it helps me adjust, but I'm not necessarily dependent on it either. I think because if it's hard for me to create when I'm like weighed down by like
Yeah.
all the things that I have to like focus on. Sure, like if I'm an artist or entrepreneur, it's like you're never not thinking about those things. You're always thinking about them like day and night. So I feel like indulging in a vice, like a drink or smoking, like helps with that for a moment. Lets you create, lets you be human for like a window of time. But they don't work the same for everybody, and I think everything in moderation is definitely true. And I think everyone has to figure out what works for them.
Yeah.
Like what smoking may do for me, meditation may do for someone else. You know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of tools to be able to create, and you know, beer and alcohol is one of the oldest. You know, these are things that humans have evolved with, and some are more toxic than others, and some can be more devastating than others, and everyone's got to understand and respect the different substances and how they affect their bodies. I agree. I'm ready for Friday nights with some whiskey. I'm ready for it.
Hell
again.
yeah.
I'm you
Hell
know,
yeah.
I miss that too. Like I don't know, sometimes it's just fun to go to a show and just like I miss going to Bremen and getting like a $6 liter of old Milwaukee or something, and just, you know, I get 3 liters and I end up in someone's backyard playing with their dog in a jam session, and it's like amazing. You know, it's like I wouldn't have been there if I didn't have those 3 liters. Maybe not. I don't know, but maybe that's dangerous. I haven't done that in a while. That was, you know, but you know, sometimes you just gotta. Life is to be lived, right?
I entirely agree. Entirely agree. That's some River West shit that you just said just now, though.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, Sam, we've been talking for about 2.5 hours.
Wow, holy crap.
Yeah, it's going by.
Well, this is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
With these conversations, you never know what's gonna happen. Some Leah on Twitch was like, "This isn't what the conversation I was expecting. I was expecting photography." And
I'm sorry.
We talked a little bit about that, but hey, this is the stuff I love talking to you about, and that's what these Cullah casts are all about. Is just conversation. Just go right into it, you know. But I would,
yeah.
if anyone has seen any social media account of mine where I'm wearing the red turtleneck with the little piece of a little wink of ice, that's Sammer's awesome photo that he did with a bunch of other, which I used to, your photos to help fundraise my last album, and like it made a huge impact. So I really appreciate the work that you did for that, and all the work you do for the Milwaukee community. And I'm ready to get back out there again with you, as soon as things are safe and, everyone exercises the right amount of caution. It'll happen eventually,
It'll happen in time.
We'll get some small groups together, and be safe, and we got to, right? We got to.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man.
Thank you again. Sorry, Leah.
I'm gonna cut to the end song, and then I'll say goodbye to you here. All right. Goodbye, everybody. Peace.
Bye.